What's going on YouTube? It's TH back again with another video, and today I'm giving you my Carolina Panthers off-season checklist. Excited to bring it your way. Let's jump into it. Before we start talking about the Panthers and their upcoming offseason, hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you do, hit that like button and help me and my channel out a ton. Also, if you're new, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button for more football content coverage. And tell me what you think the Panthers can do this offseason down in the comments section. What moves can they make in free agency, via trade, the draft? Love to have your thoughts down in the comments section. So the Panthers are obviously coming off a 5-12 season. And in these videos, I've been putting players primarily on the screen because, hey, they're the ones making plays, right? But this offseason feels massive in the way that we will remember Matt Rule as the head coach in Carolina. Like, this could be the offseason he saves his job if they somehow got a Deshaun Watson or landed a Russell Wilson some way, somehow. Derek Carr, whatever the case may be. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo is a step up over what, Sam Darnold is now. Not even almost. He probably is. It's just not the best option available. But all that to say, it could be that type of offseason, or it could be the one where they couldn't find a quarterback. They had to roll with Sam Darnold for the second straight year. Chaos ensues once more, and then he's fired next year. And we remember the whole Matt Rule, Sam Darnold trade, and that's like his legacy. So this is a huge offseason on how we remember Coach Rule. And this is a team that doesn't have a whole lot of draft picks, partially because of moves to acquire C.J. Henderson, Stephon Gilmore, Dan Arnold, right? These types of trades where they were trying to go put the chips in the center of the table, and of course the Darnold trade, the one that cost them a second round, only 5 draft picks. So this team tried to put the chips in the center of the table, and some moves I didn't hate, but the Darnold one, obviously the one the most important, did not work out. And they do have some okay cap space, but given some of the names we'll talk about here in a little bit once we get to free agency, it's going to be tough. And also $17.8 million. The cap hit for Sam Darnold fully guaranteed. So if you're going to move that number, it's because you're giving a team a draft pick. And with no 2, no 3, it's tough to have that leverage to try to pawn off Sam Darnold to some other squad and attach a draft pick to it and let them eat the money. And then next thing you know, if that were to come to fruition, they'd have north of $30 million to work with, and you could feel confident about maybe landing a Deshaun Watson or something like that. But for a team that needs a quarterback, has holes elsewhere on the roster, $18 million is not necessarily ideal. But in free agency, ultimately what it comes down to is anything and everything you can do to find a QB upgrade, you got to do it, right? So if it means, giving up your first rounder this year and plenty more years to get a Deshaun Watson, and plus you're trying anything and everything in your power to get rid of Sam Darnold in that trade too, or maybe it's sending Darnold to Pittsburgh or some QB needy team, New Orleans, whatever, and then attaching a draft pick to it. But anything you can do to get a better quarterback, that's the name of the game, right? Yeah. You have DJ Moore and DJ Moore and Terry McLaurin. It's kind of funny. You look at these two guys who are uber talented, and based off what you see on tape when you just watch these guys as just even a casual fan, you look at these guys and you're like, yeah, these are legit number ones. They could be guys in the conversation for being a top 10, top 12, top 15 wide receiver. But because of the quarterback play, the production doesn't always, match that. So even in that mix, Robbie Anderson feels like someone who is starting to have some prime years of his career diminished. Terrence Marshall Jr., they took in the second round, flashed in the preseason, looked good in the regular season as well. If you don't get a better quarterback, those guys are just talent wasted and going by the wayside. And all three of them are going to probably try to work their way out of Carolina unless you find an upgrade at that position. So again, upgrading the QB position, not only big for Rule, but it's big for those pass catchers. And then my second point, you got to do, after the quarterback position, you got to find anything and everything you can do to improve that offensive line from left tackle through right guard. It needs to get better across the board. And they do have a number of players like Matt Paredes, who is a free agent at the center spot. Good player, maybe they can bring it back, and then that position's not as big of a concern. But you see this team get mocked tackles at 6 frequently, and it's because there's 3 blue chip guys at the top of the board at left tackle in my eyes, with Evan Neal, Akeem Ekwonu, and Charles Cross. And some people like Bernard Raymond a lot. Some people like Trevor Penning, and maybe in your eyes they're in and around that conversation. I'm not quite there, but this is a good tackle class. All that to say. So this is a class where if you find that bookend left tackle, Taylor Moton on the other side, you can figure out the interior. You're in an okay spot. If you find that quarterback, you find a left tackle that can play well for you right away, then this team can make some noise, especially considering they play in a division that is on the decline with Brady departing from Tampa Bay. And then this is where it gets tough. That's where that $17.8 million is. It's hard to, let's get a quarterback. Let's get a left tackle because we know we got to get better on the offensive side. But I think Stephon Gilmore played pretty well, showed he's still got some juice in the tank. And if you don't keep Stephon Gilmore, you keep Dante Jackson around, feels like they're more inclined to want to keep Gilmore than Jackson based off of the stuff I've seen and the news that I've seen published. So if that's the case, Gilmore's probably the more expensive of the two as well. And then Hassan Reddick, I think, played really, really well opposite of Brian Burns. You look at him, play by play. Burns is probably the one, he grades out a little bit better based off, coaches who know the game and, Pro Football Focus, they grade every play, et cetera, et cetera. Burns is probably the one who has, the better grading stuff. But production-wise, when you look at sacks and hurries, Reddick racked up those numbers, especially in the early goings of the year when Carolina had that defense imposing and has one of the best defensive units across the board in the NFL. So try to keep those two guys around. I think if you do that, and then if you were able to find a QB, maybe it's you trade for Russell Wilson, extend him, and then push that money forward. And then at 6, you're probably not picking there if you're getting a Russell Wilson, but you could find any way to improve, even just marginal upgrades over a Cam Irving, a Pat Elflein, who, since you're a year away from signing those guys, you could cut them, but you'd only save about $1.5 million, I think, for each name. It's tough, but if they keep those veterans around on the defensive side, get a QB upgrade, find a left tackle in specific, then this team could make some noise. But that is a lot to do with 5 draft picks at your disposal and less than $18 million to spend in free agency. So we'll see. Once we get to the draft, I think the focus is going to be, if you're going to have this pick at 6, get an offensive tackle. I know what that means. At 6, if you go tackle, if you don't land a Russell Wilson, a Derek Carr, et cetera, then that means it's probably Sam Darnold again next year. At least the offensive line will be a little bit better, and maybe he takes a marginal step forward. Not that it's going to make a huge difference, but he'll go from being pretty bad to maybe just bad. Anything you can get, you want to take here. Part of the reason I think you key on the tackle at 6 is just because I don't feel comfortable taking a Kenny Pickett, who has this, probably him or Ritter. Typically, people that draft analysts and mock draft, folk will say are the most QB or most NFL ready right now. You could go that route. They don't have as much of an upside. Maybe Ritter does a little bit more than Pickett. But, if you want to make that play, okay, the offensive line's still an issue. But 6 still feels a little rich for those two. And you could go Malik Willis because, hey, maybe the upside's there and he's totally worth taking at 6 if it all works out. But I also don't think he's ready to play this year. And do you want Malik Willis working with Sam Darnold day in and day out? I don't know about that. So I think you just go tackle there at 6. And then, maybe it is Jimmy Garoppolo and you're giving up a future 2 and this year's 4, and you're just replicating that Sam Darnold trade, and you're settling for Jimmy Garoppolo as an upgrade. Maybe that's the move. Currently no picks on day 2 and 3, and that's the other option, and that's what I have in that bulletin point with day 1. Maybe your best bet is just trading back. It takes 2 to tango, though, and I don't see a team that's wanting to move up to 6 to take a quarterback unless it's Pittsburgh or Washington who's really keyed in. They say, hey, I want to make sure I'm the team with Malik Willis. And that's about it. That's the only way I can see something like that happening. Because this tackle class is pretty deep. The edge class, same thing. Cornerback, you can wait till the mid and late rounds to find starter plus level options at those positions. So what's the need to move up to 6? I don't know. Unless the team is really enamored by Neal, Ekwonu, Cross, and they start to slip a little bit. So we'll see. If they trade back, then you might have something to work with here on day 2. And if that's the case, patching in for where you might lose a Gilmore, where you might lose a Reddick makes sense. And if you do trade back and get a tackle in the first round, maybe you can find a falling Carson Strong, a falling Matt Corral, Kenny Pick, whoever may be there in the second round, and maybe that's your best way forward. And then, day 3, I think, again, Matt Paredes, believe he's going to be a free agent this year, barring, any, re-signings, extensions that come about as I'm recording this on Thursday evening or Thursday morning. But, adding to the interior offensive line depth, you could use some edge and interior or inside linebacker players as well. I would just take on projects. People that think maybe if you're looking for an inside linebacker to pair with Shaq Thompson, someone who can, is that Divine Diablo, mold safety moving to inside linebacker, take on that project. And I think they could also take on some projects on the edge, right? Take on a guy who maybe doesn't have a whole lot of production, hasn't shown a whole lot in regards to winning with his hands, right? Not just a guy who can win right now, but has the size, the arm length. Maybe he's twitchy, puts up great numbers at the combine. I would take on those projects in rounds 4 onward, basically, just to, maybe in a couple years' time, that's someone who could take over fully for Hassan Reddick, depending on if he comes back this offseason in general. But that's that for the draft. And my final notes, with a legit quarterback, this team could be the best in the NFC South, right? Like, a lot of question marks around the Saints. What's Tampa Bay going to do with the quarterback position? The Falcons look like they're on the decline. It takes one big move, especially at the quarterback position, and Carolina can be the best team in this division, despite holes elsewhere. So, that I think remains priority number one. Do anything and everything you can to land a Derek Carr, a Deshaun Watson, or Russell Wilson, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Otherwise, this team's just going to be bad. I'm sorry, Carolina fans. If you're rolling out with Sam Darnold, even if you get Charles Cross at 6, who I've been mocking you a ton, and you do some of the other things, you bring back Stephon Gilmore and Hassan Reddick, it's not going to matter if Sam Darnold's under center in the shotgun, right? If you're rolling out with Darnold, this team is just going to be in that 5 to 7 win window. But that's going to do it for my Carolina Panthers offseason checklist video. Kind of ends on a bummer of a note. But tell me what you think about this team down in the comment section. Where can they get better? What quarterback do you think maybe fits what Matt Rule's trying to do? What do you think it would cost to get one of those headline quarterbacks? Love to have your thoughts down in the comment section. Hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. If you did, hit that like button and help me and my channel a ton. If you're new around here, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. That's going to do it for me. Hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day. And until next time, my name is Teej, and I'm signing off.